Good evening, everybody. I apologize. This is the Board of Education meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meetings Act was provided by written notice on January 8th, 2018 to the Courier News, the Echo Sentinel, the Star Ledger, Tappan DeWarren, and the clerks of the Borough of Watchung and the townships of Greenbrook, Long Hill, and Warren. Roll call, please, Mr. Stice.
Ms. Barone?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Mizio?
Here.
Mr. Fahey? Mr. Hayek?
Here.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Here.
Mr. Martins?
Here.
Mr. Morrison?
Here.
Dr. Shabilsky? And Mr. Fallon.
Yes. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will entertain a motion in accordance with the provision of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Be it hereby resolved that the board move into executive session to discuss confidential personnel matters and the CSA merit goals, after which action will be taken. It is expected that the matters discussed in executive session will be made public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we still have a quorum. We're back in public session. Ms. Jewett, superintendent's comments.
Yes. I know we have a lot to discuss, so my only comments are that it's been a very busy summer here. Our extended school year students are very active. Their vegetable garden is much more successful than any I've ever planted. That's out in her courtyard. We have a number of camps going on, so you would come into our school during the day and almost think that it was actually the middle of the school year. But we're getting a lot done, and I really commend our maintenance staff for all the work they're doing over the summer. They do a tremendous job. Chris Bick and his staff getting the building looking beautiful for September. So that's all.
I just want to thank the administration and the teachers for the job they did at graduation. The ceremony went off very nicely this year, and there's a lot of work organizing that, and I appreciate the effort put into that by both the administration and the teachers here. Mr. Stice.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to notify the board and the public that we did receive, the Washington Hills Regional High School did receive additional state aid. We received exactly $224,010. That's based on the formula that was revised by the state legislature. And we talked about it in operations, and I'll bring it up during the operations discussion. But there are 3 options that the board has, and we're supposed to make a decision by August 1st. So we'll talk more about that during the operations.
Which we have now reached.
Okay, here we are. All right, good timing. Well, okay. So the first thing we talked about was the agenda items on tonight. One of the things that is on the agenda is some of the work that was being done for the Music Tech Lab, which we're putting into room 111. There's a bid on the agenda. There is some other items under D7, which are electrical work, computers, and some of the wall and floor sound deadening type items that we're putting in. They're not a large amount of money, but the electrical is a little bit larger, and that's in the cooperative bid section. Overall, the budget for the project was $200,000, and we're at $170,000. And the biggest item is the bid we had. We only had one bidder, and that's $84,500. That's the bulk of the equipment. It's desks, it's your technical equipment that goes, and some of the instruments that go with that program. So those items are on, and we talked briefly about that. Concerns about the one bidder, always an issue, but this is within budget, I will say that. And then we talked about the Booster Club policy, which is on the agenda tonight. We did add some language through our attorney on the very last sentence that the board can take other legal action. We did not specify the legal action. We didn't want to get into too much detail. But we just want to have a little bit more, I think the board wanted more teeth to that policy, just in case the Booster Club groups run amok. Go rogue, run amok. But anyway, so that's on the agenda for first read. We did have it, but I made change. We did have it about a month ago, but we did make some changes. So we put it back on for first read. And then we talked a lot about the additional state aid. And we have 3 options. Option number 1 is to notify the township tax boards and the county tax board and use it for tax relief. So it's $224,000, and just in numbers for the rest of the board, so you know, like I calculated, it was under $10 for 2 of the towns. Warren was a savings of $10.26 for just 2018, and that would go forward.
That's for an average.
For the
value
average home, sorry, for the average home, and I just plugged in the numbers, and if we were to change for tax relief, for Watchung it was $8.93, and for Long Hill, I think it was $7.75, all around $10 just for 2018. So that's one option, and then option 2 is you can appropriate those funds into the budget. One of the recommendations that we're coming up with and we're bringing to the board is to appropriate those funds and put it into the project that's already existing in the gym 7-8 locker room to add air conditioning to gym 7-8, which is used for a number of things, including AP testing. It was used for phys ed. Which is our biggest problem. The physical education program complained the most about the temperature in the room. I've heard more from them than anybody else. We have athletics in there too, but they're usually after hours, so it's not as bad. But I can just tell you that during the day, that's the bigger problem. Not to mention that they're wooden floors, air conditioning and wooden floors, it would help. It would increase the life of that wooden floor if you have air conditioning. Humidity and wood don't really go well together, so that's an issue. So that's option 2. And then option 3 is you can designate it for something in 1920, which I would always advise the board to stay away from that one. It's kind of hard to understand and plan for 1920 right now. We have a number of projects, but to fit it into that dollar amount may be tough. Again, our recommendation would be the second one. We had a lively debate on that. We had folks who weren't in favor of putting it back to the board. We're favoring the tax relief piece. So that's one's up to discussion. The key aspect here is that the vote does require, and I looked for both, the vote does require a 2/3 vote. And actually, that was for either. Option.
2/3 of
The entire board.
The full board. So you have to have 7 votes, quite frankly, 7.
So, I'm sorry, so August 1st?
The deadline is
August
August 1st, which makes it tough.
Yeah.
And we literally just got the notification,
Right,
so,
yes, okay.
so that does make it a
You have
little
to
tough.
make the decision by August 1st because that's.
Because they have to do the tax bills for the
The
towns.
tax bills.
Okay,
So,
Yeah.
all right.
Tim, if I could, option 2, is that what the committee is suggesting, or is that what?
I'm not going to speak on behalf of the committee. I will speak
Okay.
on behalf of the administration. The administration is recommending option 2,
Okay.
which be to add to the gymnasium project, the locker room project, but to add air conditioning to that area.
It's a-
So,
yeah.
can I ask what your rationale is for that when last year you asked the taxpayer to go to 2% and cap, and in this past budget round, you basically reallocated or put $1.5 million away in different reserve accounts?
Right.
What would be your rationale as why not to give it back to the taxpayer as relief?
The rationale is the dollar amount is not, it's a smaller amount per household. It's like a $10 differential. So you know, as a financial manager, what I would recommend the board do and consider is put the money into the invested capital of the building. You know, you have a responsibility to upkeep the building. That gymnasium should have air conditioning, particularly with a wooden floor. We have this floor that was, I think, replaced during the Sandy storm. And the longer it goes without that air conditioning, it's just going to shorten the life of it. So that would be number one on my list. But also, like I said, the complaints that we're getting from the physical education program that I hear all the time, it gets warm in that room. It's in the middle of the building. The airflow isn't great. It's set up for air conditioning. We did so when we did the project back in 2008 or 9, or whatever the storm was. So, you know, it's set up for it. So
And when you say it's set up for air conditioning, what that means is there's a chiller in the unit on the roof.
correct.
So controls would have to be done and
Right.
So
certain other work. but-
is this chiller project in our long-range facility plan at all? Or is this just a
No,
wish
it
list
is.
for the administration?
No,
at this
no,
point?
it's definitely in the program. In fact, our architect is working on not only for Gym 7-8, but, and again, this is a work in progress, but we have it for Gym 7-8, Gym 3-4, where the kids eat lunch, and Gym 5-6. I would even go 5-6 or 3-4 as well if we had the additional money. The 5-6 it's more expensive because it's further away from the chillers. You'd have to do rooftop. There may be some duct work, so that's going to be twice as expensive as 7-8. Not to mention, that's not a wooden floor. That is I don't want to call it vinyl because I'll get the, but it's a rubberized floor, so it doesn't really need that conditioning of the air as much. Although I would still love to have it there, because again, I think it's warm up there. And we actually, another thing that we have had in those gyms has been our graduation. Now lately, it's been great because we've had the good weather. But we have had it inside and it was tough. I gotta tell you, it was tough. 3-4, where the kids eat, you know, that's part of our larger plan where we're looking to move them out of there and put them in a different space. That may require a little more funding, so I'd kind of be reluctant to make big changes in that room knowing that we're planning to do something else down the road. So, I mean, the board hasn't seen much of that plan yet. We've seen just bits and pieces of it, which we still got. It's very rough at this point. But that's why I wouldn't pick 3-4. And the rationale is to not put it back to the taxpayer. And I'm very sympathetic to the taxpayers. You know, being one myself, not in this area, but in a different town, I certainly understand that. I pay my share of taxes, believe me. But in this case, as a taxpayer myself, I would prefer that the district use it to improve their capital assets, so they don't have to come to me 3 years from now and pay twice that much because of inflation or whatever caused that to go up. So that's my rationale. And this wasn't my decision. This was something that we talked about it administratively. We involved the architect. We had our director of operations. We tried to quickly decide, you know, that dollar amount, where does it fit and where would it benefit the most folks, students and taxpayers, and we felt that was the best fit.
So we talk about the three options then. When you appropriate, if you're going to appropriate the money into the budget and you mention the AC, do you have to earmark it? So we can't just vote, can't we just vote that we want to appropriate into the budget and then decide what we want to do with it? Like,
No, you have to pick a line. You have to pick a line item. You have to specifically pick a line item. They're specific about that.
Really?
Yes.
That's
We don't
not
have
what we
any
talked
options,
about
so
in
we're not-
operations.
We're not being given
Then I
any-
wasn't clear. I have to have a line item. I can't just blanketly put it into the budget.
As I recall, when we were sitting in the
I misspoke, that was my
operations,
misunderstanding, so.
No,
yeah,
you
because
got to have a line item.
So you guys did talk about other options in the committee meeting, you just talked about, what did you, I mean, as far as appropriating it back into the budget, was that the only project you guys talked about?
No.
Yes.
No, Peter had asked
Yeah, I
if
asked
there were
about
other
things.
projects we considered.
Okay.
We talked about
and-
what was cut, see, every single year, we talk about what projects we want to do on a wish list, and then we cut projects that we can't fit into the budget. And then the administration goes back and says, now we have more money, Here are those items that we cut, and they were the top of the list. So certainly we as a board can say there are different things, but this was the top of the list item that got cut, and now it's
Well,
back in.
I don't know that it got cut from anything.
Absolutely it did.
Okay.
It never made the,
Yeah, it was in there.
it never made to the board level.
It got cut in the sense that it was never there because there was never money,
Like
but it's on the
tennis
top of
courts,
the
is it
list.
similar to the tennis courts?
Yeah, it was on our list.
It was
just
on the
had-
list, but it never
cut
got-
That's what I'm in my head, I'm going, okay, I
It never
remember
got
tennis
to
courts.
this level.
Wait, so another question, they said designated for something in the next budget, in 2020, is that, so the next one?
1920,
So
correct.
what's the downside of this again?
It's just, it's out to 1920, and you have to make a plan right now for what you want to use at 1920 for that amount of money, and I think that's a little
So that
difficult.
also has to be, you need a line item for that, you can't just put it into the budget. You have
No,
to-
that's a little bit different. You can designate it for a purpose, like a capital purpose or something like that, but again, what exactly are you putting it to?
Well, no, I'm just asking, like, what are
Yeah.
our options, so if we wanna put it forward, can it just go into a reserve, does it, I'm just looking at what the options are.
Yeah,
Because you could put it in
again-
that budget and then do the air, not that I'm recommending, so then you can still do the air conditioning if you put it.
The difference is, because we're doing the 7-8 locker rooms, it's more cost-effective to do it while we're doing that.
you're going to have a contractor here, and you're doing it in mid-year, which is,
That's one of the reasons that it went to the top of our
Yeah,
list,
I mean-
because it was on our list, and it becomes more cost-effective to do
And
it.
what
Right.
about cost, I mean, I'm sure, do you have a general idea what it may cost? So now we're getting $224,000, what would this project cost, approximately? Do you have any
Our
idea?
estimates based on building and grounds, but also our architect, were about 250 to 300. That's what their estimate was.
Okay.
250 to 300 to add the air conditioning in there.
Then add additional monies from somewhere else in the budget.
Possibly.
And
You know,
those are back of the napkin calculations with no firm agreement that 224 will cover that air conditioning.
Well,
project.
I wouldn't categorize it as back to the napkin. This is something that, again, the architect for the board is working on a 5-year plan. And part of that 5-year plan is this project. So they have, it's not a quick calculation. They have an idea of what it is. Now, that doesn't mean a bid may come in 10% higher, 10% lower. You know, what we would do is we would put that bid as that's an alternate to a project. You may never be able to do it because the bids may come in too high for the other piece of the project anyway. So this may go into surplus naturally if we don't spend it.
Or even in this case, if it can't be done for an amount close to this, we as a board may decide at that point not to do it, not to
And then it
accept
goes-
it.
and
Which
then
is
it
why
goes
you would
into
do it as an
surplus.
alternate.
It goes into surplus, you're saying.
Correct.
Now,
So you have to this doesn't make any sense, so you have to
Right.
line item it, but if later on the bids come in and we're like, well, it was $350,000 and we don't have the extra $125,000, then it's no longer a line item and it just pops into surplus, so why can't you just
At
put
the
it
end
in
of the
surplus
year.
in the first
that
place?
happens all the time.
At the end of the year?
Yeah, it goes through the process so that when you close the books, then it goes into it. Because you didn't spend it.
And getting back to Lisa's question, which is other projects, I did ask him, and he did address some of them. Some of them were the gym 3-4 air conditioning, but the big issue there was, we don't, you know, this particular gym we use for AP testing as well. So that's a use during the school year, as well as it being used by the summer programs that are here. And the gym 3-4 project would have been more expensive because it was away from the chillers, and you mentioned
Yeah.
one or two other things.
I mentioned the steam lab that we were looking at, but that's well above this amount. We looked at the ceramics room, which we would actually, as part of the plan, we're actually looking at, and again, this is very preliminary, so I don't want to get into a lot of detail, but we're talking about moving that room to another section. That's more practical, but again, we have a lot to do to get to that point. So that's why I wouldn't recommend those. Like, they're part of a bigger overall plan that we're looking at. I think there was one other, and Makerspace was something.
So
But again, same
if I
thing,
could
part
ask-
of a bigger project.
How much is in the
I'm sorry,
capital?
Bob had
Oh,
a
I'm sorry,
question.
Bob, go ahead.
So just to make sure that I'm clear on this, now, the amount of money that we received prior to this week, that we had put into capital reserve, because we weren't sure that was real money, but now that the budget's been locked, it is. How much was that?
About 120?
Is it 110, 120?
State aid?
The
How
state
many
aid, yes.
state aid?
120, yeah, we received an additional, back in March.
Back in March, right.
The governors received $120,000 of additional state aid from last year.
Right, and because we were concerned about that, whether or not that was real money, because that hadn't been
Right.
allocated yet, we
Shifted it to reserve.
We put that aside so that we
More-
weren't
more or
basing
less.
our budget on mythical
Correct.
dollars.
So it wouldn't hurt a program.
So we have that 120, then we've got the new, the 224 that just came in, so that's brand new money, right?
Yeah, as of July 13th.
All right, and then 2 years ago, we went up 4%
Correct.
on our budget to communities. Last year, we went 2% and bank cap.
Right, I think it was 17, 18 was the 4.
So then, at 224, we're talking about, 25% of a 2% cap. So even though you're saying it's like $10 for an individual person, it's actually half a point or 25% of an annual increase.
Yeah, well, I usually, our 2% is a little over 550,000
Oh, so then it's
of
almost
the
half.
tax levy.
Right, so it's
That's
almost half.
generally what it is, yeah.
So in this instance, there's an opportunity to give back half of that levy to the community.
Good.
So we talk about it's $9, $10, $12. In the context of the way that people are used to seeing this, it's half of the tax allocation for the year that we would be able to return to the taxpayers.
Yeah, you could, absolutely.
I'm asking.
That's the number, yeah,
they-
that's correct,
both
that's the
those-
number.
Both those statements are correct.
They are correct.
Great, thank you.
Right. Other than,
I-
but it's the average, the numbers that I was giving you is the average home.
Get it, and I'm,
Which could
again,
be different.
and I was just with you ballparking to make sure that,
Right.
we were in,
Right, and I
reasonable
mean, to
ranges.
further that, we could give all of the reserve back as taxpayer relief too. It's just, are we good stewards of the school if we're not doing long-range planning
Right,
and
what would
maintaining the
What would the
facility?
auditor say? The auditor would say, put the money to a long-range capital project. That's what your auditor would say. Because your auditor always says, make sure you have enough money to maintain your building. Every single year, they will indicate to you, make sure you have enough money to maintain your building. So somehow, we got some extra money, it's going towards maintenance of the building, it's a capital project. We have to do this, we're gonna have to do it at some point in time. 2% is never enough money for us to maintain our building. It's never going to be.
Barry?
If we don't use the money for the Gym 7-8 project now, and we decide, say, in 5 years to do it, it's going to be a lot more money. Because we're already in the midst, we'll be in the midst of construction for the locker room. So part of the work that this project would take will already be done. And if we have to start all over afterwards, it's gonna be more money. Plus, costs always go up on air conditioning.
Tim, if I could ask you, how much is in the capital reserve fund now?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I know it's over $1 million.
Okay, if the board so choose to go out for a referendum, could the district get 40% or 38% back on that referendum project again?
You mean from state aid?
Yes, sir.
It depends if it's available, yeah. I mean, when it's available, yes, but that's
You
not
don't
always.
know if it is gonna
No,
be available.
You don't,
No, that's like a hit or miss when you're
It
doing
is.
it. That's, sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't have it.
right?
Shows up, I mean, obviously, they made a decision to give it back in state aid. They're probably not gonna do a 40%.
The decision they made.
We're not the only one, I'm assuming, that got more state
No,
aid.
there were,
Right.
there were winners and
Not
losers.
everyone.
But a lot of people.
The underfunded schools got back
So-
state aid.
They essentially, yeah, they're trying to, and if you listen to Senator Sweeney, they're trying to fund the original formula. This was back in the Corzine administration. They had this formula. It hasn't been funded for years. They had hold harmless provisions for those who, weren't quite, when you did the calculation, they should have got less. But they created this adjustment aid category. The districts who lost money, they had adjustment aid. So those folks lost money. I know because I live in one of them. But Hillsborough lost money, so, it was probably the only one in Somerset County, but they lost, no, it wasn't a large amount for them. But districts like ours, who, our aid is, quote, stabilized because of our average home values and the income level being higher, it's always been quote-unquote stabilized. So we got less aid. So now it's up to about 58% of the actual calculation of what we're supposed to get. So that's what that was all, that's what the history of that is.
So next year, we can expect 58% funding, not 52%?
If
If the
state,
legislature votes a budget that
Right.
provides that much. I mean, that's what we deal with every single year.
Right.
and-
So then, this is not a
because one year we lost all of our aid, you know, it was when Christie first came
Came
in,
in.
they took
Yeah.
away everything. So that was completely unpredictable, and who knew that was coming, but it happened. Which is what makes us financial folks nervous, is that's where we get nervous. And we know that what's here today could be gone tomorrow because the vote changed and we have a new guy and this is what you have and he'll take everything, and it happens.
And frankly, even with this additional amount, we're still only getting 58% of the state formula aid that, you know, under the plan, we're supposed to be getting. Hopefully, next year with Governor Murphy, he's gonna wanna at least reach that level and increase it, but, you know, just like every year, you know, all of us, both on operations and Tim, sit with, and hold our breath till we get the state aid figures, because you never know. Bob?
But the plan within the legislation that Sweeney put forward is a 4-year tiered step to where we would get from 58% theoretically to 100%.
Yes.
Which from where we are today is in excess of an additional $1 million from what we're getting today,
We'll never see it.
right?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And then, you have to remember also, we're only at 2% because we have a huge, not a huge, but we had a good reduction of teachers we're getting rid of this year, and our student population is decreasing.
And health savings.
And health
Yes, and
insurance
health
savings.
savings.
Yeah, there's
So in the
three
future,
pieces.
you know, if we go back up, we're gonna be strapped again. So, again, maintenance projects, my experience on board from Long Hill is when that money is there and you have a need, you better do it at that time, because it's like saying, I'm gonna wait next year to get my roof done, and then Superstorm Sandy comes. That's the kind of thing, just in your house, you think about it. You have the money to do the project now, you're gonna wait and see, and I'm gonna take a vacation? No, I'm not. I'm gonna fix the roof.
And Tim, if I could ask you to clarify, because this is a little different than we discussed before, has to be decided by August 1st, not only whether or not we're going to appropriate this into our budget, but what line item that we've got to do. So we're not in a situation
Right.
where we could say, we're gonna spend it on capital projects and then decide in another month or two which capital projects we're gonna put it into.
No, like you saw if you see the resolution, the walk-in, I have a specific line item. So that's-
I know you do, but
Yeah.
I'm asking, if that's the requirement that we have to
It
meet.
is, yeah. Yeah, because you can't just say, well, we're going to appropriate it anywhere in the budget. Now, you got to tell them what it is.
Oh, yeah, it's in D18, he specifies
Right.
what he's
Where it's
about to
from and
ask.
where it's going.
He
No,
says,
and
this
not
is
to
what we're
mention-
gonna use it for, and then D19 says, no, we're
Right.
using it.
Right, and specifically, are you going to add to the capital
Some of us don't
piece?
have the walk-in item.
I'll grab it.
Sorry about that.
That's right.
Yeah, if you're going to add capital monies too, you got to get county approval to do that. So that's another piece of the puzzle.
But that would be after bids, you're talking,
No, you got to do that.
before bidding?
It's a resolution that I got to get their approval to add $1. If it was $1 to a capital project, you got to get county approval to do that. Which is essentially state approval.
Okay, but we don't have to do that tonight,
You would have to do both if you were going to appropriate it into the budget.
Oh, okay,
You got to do it by August 1st.
okay. But it's not a separate resolution, or?
It is. It's,
Oh, you're saying you already did the separate
We have,
resolution?
yes,
Oh, okay,
I
I
have
thought you
a-
were saying on top of these two. I'm
I have
sorry.
2 walk-ins,
Right.
D18 and D19.
Okay,
D18 would be the resolution that readopts the budget, so to speak, adding to that revenue account, which is, I know it sounds weird, transportation, but that's the categorical aid
Right,
that they
yep.
increased. And then the construction services account, which I placed on there. That's the 18. The 19 is the
Is
permission
the one that goes to the county.
to go to the county, because
Okay.
we're adding monies to a capital project.
Right.
You know, and budget guidelines don't allow you to add capital monies without county approval first.
Okay.
So they're simultaneous, so to speak. So that was the bulk of our conversation, as you can most likely tell. There's other things that we touched upon as well, but not as much as this. This was the largest of the two, or 3 or 4 things that we talked about.
Finishing up the report from the operations committee, because
We-
the shared services.
We didn't get
We
to
didn't
it.
get to that. We didn't get to shared services, and we didn't get to the last item as well.
Year-end closings on the agenda.
We did not, and it's not on the agenda. So that's the operations report there, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Stiles. Do we have any other committee reports that I'm overlooking? We are now at the first opportunity for public comment. The first public comment period will be limited to agenda items for this meeting only. The second public comment period will be open to any topic. All comments are limited to 5 minutes. If you wish to address the board, please step up to the podium, state your name, what town you're from, and address us. Seeing none, I will now close the first opportunity for public comment. Board discussion. Bob?
To follow up on Lisa's question, I know we didn't get to the shared services conversation in operations, but since this is a board goal for the year and we're coming up toward the end of that process, is there anything that we can discuss as a board or hear about as a board regarding the discussion of shared services? Or if not, that's fine. I'm just, it's another month before there's another meeting, and if there's something we can talk about, it'd be great.
We have started some discussions with 2 of the 4 districts regarding sharing services relating to some special ed supervision. And those have been sort of jump-started a little bit,
But
less
they're in the infancy too
less
much,
because of our board goals than because of a need expressed in one of our districts and then another district getting, also being interested in it. We're as Chris said, it's in its infancy. The administration's has already had some discussions with the county soup about things that might be doable. We're going to be looking into it over the next month, and I think at next month's meeting, we'll be able to talk to the whole board in all 4 towns about what we might be able to do there.
Okay. And a second follow-up item.
Yeah.
A couple board meetings ago, I asked about there was a faculty climate survey that had been done. And has that been delivered?
I haven't, no. Yeah, we haven't gotten it.
No,
So
and-
the superintendent's never received it, you've
They
never
were
received it?
And the Ed Council asked for it at our last meeting just before graduation, and we still haven't gotten it yet.
Okay. Great, thank you.
from the faculty. Before we go on to action items, I want to have a little bit more discussion just regarding the budget and what we're going to do, because to the extent, as Mr. Stiles indicated, in order to allocate the money into the budget, we need 7 votes. Obviously, we only have 8 people here tonight, if I can count.
Yes. I did that already.
And, two of our members aren't present. And I know at least one and possibly more members who are here, I believe from earlier discussions, favor tax relief to to residents rather than allocating it to the budget. I would just ask, you know, that we, I don't know whether we want to do a straw poll or have discussions on who wants tax relief and.
Can you do a straw poll in public?
You can-
No, you can only vote in public.
Yeah,
I just
pretty much.
let it vote.
Either that or you have to pull it, if you don't think you have the votes.
No, well, well,
But you don't pull a line item just because you don't think you're gonna have,
Yes,
have,
you
have
can.
the votes.
no,
Yes, you
Well,
can.
well,
Perception,
You can, whether or not it's right is another.
I'm not looking to pull it. You know, my sense is if we've got 4 board members who, you know, want this to go to tax relief, then we might as well decide this tonight. If we have fewer than that, then we may have to have a special meeting between now
Well,
and
if,
August 1st
let
to
me
see
just ask
whether or
us
not
a
there are
question,
going to be
right now,
eight votes.
right now, the way it's presented is, it's gonna go up or down on this. It doesn't mean it goes anywhere after that, then you have to have another
Yeah.
resolution
Yeah.
Right.
at the next time, which Tim could give us this one again next time, if he wants, or the administration can.
Yeah, no,
Don't have to move it though.
that's true. Okay, let's move on into action items, unless anybody else wants to.
The only reason, let me just say, the only reason to pull it would be is if people need more information, right? That would be one reason to pull it and put it, and then have to have a special meeting on it before August 1st.
Well, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
With the tax relief, so what happens then going forward with the 2% cap? What is it based on?
It lowers our base if we use
It
it for
lowers
tax
the
relief.
base,
Yeah.
Help me understand that. It lowers the base
The tax levy base.
Well, it
From
makes it
what?
less than back to what it is now.
So it's not taking where we are now and lowering it. We're where we are now.
No, it would lower.
No, it does.
It does.
Yeah, it doesn't add to
You would
it,
reduce-
but it reduces it if we give it back.
Right, you reduce the tax levy,
Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah, because we would,
because we're giving it
if
back.
we give it back, then we've got less of a tax levy this year.
Right.
Because this isn't what we raised.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Got
think
it.
of it this way, if you had a $5 million tax levy, you'd be taking 5 million minus 200,000.
Mhm.
And that's, your 2% would be
So
on that.
it's a
Reduces us
permanent
going forward.
impact.
Yeah, it would, but yeah,
It's
that's
like a
correct.
pension thing.
Okay, we're at action items.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items A1 through A5.
Second.
Any discussion on items A1 through A5?
Yes, I want to discuss A5. So I checked the website of NJSIAA, couldn't find information relevant, and then Beth pointed out there was something on the website that says the board needs to approve this, except unless it's statutory, I'm not voting on this. To me, this is like I don't understand this. This to me is like daily operations, and unless you can point where I'm required to vote on this, I'm just going to abstain.
And the way, but just so I'm clear, is when I read the
Acclimatization.
yes, please,
of
thank
the-
you. Apparently our date was wrong, because you have to get 14 days, is that why it's moving?
They changed the start date of football season after
Right.
they established, so it wasn't
So
our
we
date was
always
wrong.
do this, we always do the
No,
acclimatization.
they changed the date when you can start the season this year. So you can start your scrimmage, they pulled the season, opening day of the season is, I guess essentially a week earlier this year. So you can start your scrimmages earlier. This is they've changed, this is the first year they've done that, so there's more time in between the end of the season
Right.
and playoffs.
Right.
So this is the first year that this has happened, and what happened is you have to get a certain number of
Yeah, you
days
have
of
to get
practice
14
in
days
before you
in.
can scrimmage.
Yeah.
And NJSIA realized that they hadn't done that, calculated that correctly, and that's the
Yeah,
reason for this.
so Lisa, what I think is that, what I mean by that is, I think all this is they always have 14 days of acclimatization before they can scrimmage, according to that thing you showed me. And that because the date of the scrimmage is moved up, they have to move, so the kids get the
Acclimatization.
And
14
there's
days.
more on the website, there's a chart showing the
Right.
dates, I
Right.
understand it, but why am I required to vote on this? Is there most of what we do is statutory. We're
Because they told us.
Yeah,
obligated.
yeah, really, because they told us to.
Versus the
Who told-
NJSIA.
NJSIA.
I'm just.
Yeah.
She's
Well, the
registering for protest. Okay.
Duly
Interscholastic.
Duly-
You don't like
Duly
policy.
noted. Duly noted. You and Peter.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Okay, no further discussion. Could I have a roll call vote on A1 through A5?
Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizio?
Abstain.
On all of them?
No, so,
Flustered yourself.
That's a yes
She
on
hasn't
A1 through A4.
Whatever the
and
word is.
abstention.
You haven't had enough acclimatization to
Right.
the.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
And Mr. Fountain?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Motion is carried.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items A6 through A10.
Second.
Any discussion of items, resolutions A6 through A10? Mr. Stiles, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizio?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
And Mr. Fountain?
Yes.
Okay, motion's carried.
Mr. President, I would like to move items C1 through C29.
Second.
Any discussion of resolutions C1 through C29? Hearing none, could we have a roll call vote, Mr. Stiles?
Oop, yep, sorry, I lost my pen. Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizio?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
And Mr. Fountain? Peter?
Peter, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, motion's carried.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items D1 through D13.
Second. Can I read,
No, D13, shouldn't it go to 18 and 19 as well, or no?
No, we have
No,
to stop
we'll
because
do
there are
them
stars.
well, 18 and 19.
18 and 19
Oh.
are non-starred.
I'm sorry. I'll amend that. D1 through D13 plus D18 and D19.
Second.
18 and 19 are the walk-ons.
So we'll
Yes.
vote on them separately, or do you want to include them now?
Again, I'm just pointing that out. It's your guys' call, whatever you want to do.
What's easier for you to,
It's easier if you vote on one block.
but we can selectively
Yes.
choose
Yes.
which
Yeah,
one?
Yes, you can.
Okay,
You can, yes.
okay, that's fine.
I'm just going to read D3, resolve the Board of Education accepts with gratitude a donation in the amount of $7,000 from the Ernst Wessel Foundation, Inc. to be used for educational purposes through the award of 2 student scholarships. And I have a question on D13, soliciting bids for the transportation services for athletic routes. So I did read the blue notes, but, so this is something normally where would it come from? Why is this different now? I don't understand.
We're struggling with the drivers a little bit to maintain them. We're losing some, probably because they're getting full-time jobs elsewhere. So our driver pool, which we've had an ad out for how long, we haven't had. So we're struggling to get drivers, and the problem is it's funny, as our enrollment seems to go down, but our athletic programs don't seem to go the same way. So which is good. I mean, we have a lot of kids who are participating in school sports, but we're having trouble accommodating them with the buses and the drivers that we have.
Do we anticipate just the normal bus companies, the ones we use to transport
It's a
students to from school that would bid on
correct.
this?
It would be. It's generally how transportation generally works with the bids is honestly it's the people who are closest. Logistics has a lot to do with it. So if they're here and they have to pick up kids here and go here, it's easier than coming from here, picking up kids. So it's generally the ones that are in this area will get, they tend to get the bid.
All right, thank you.
I just want one more clarification on D18. So the 224.10, the state gives us, right?
Correct.
Yes.
We get it no matter what, no matter if this is voted up or down. But this issue is where to put it.
Correct.
And if this is no, it just goes back into the is smaller than the 22410, it has to go back to the, it'll go automatically back to the taxpayers?
Yeah, I mean, in a roundabout way, yes, it will. It won't be a direct, in other words, you'd have to vote to have it as direct tax relief right away, and so they can change the A4Fs right now, which they can do. It's a process, step by step, but you can. But if you don't do either, it'll do exactly what you said. It'll just come in as revenue and eventually,
So do we need to allocate where we want that money to go to? If we want it to go to tax relief, or we don't allocate it to anything?
If you want to change the 2018 A4F, which is the tax levy,
Okay,
that the townships, I shouldn't say township, so 3 townships can change that.
right,
So when folks get their tax bills, it'll be a little lower.
right.
You'd have to do that by resolution.
And
That
how-
you have to do like right, it would have to be,
And how many votes would that resolution need to
that is the
pass?
same, believe it or not, it's
7?
the same thing, yeah. So that's the same thing.
So what's gonna so if 18 or 19 is voted, you don't get 7 on this.
Right.
It'll just, this money just goes into the budget,
Mhm.
but since it's not earmarked for anything, it goes back.
Theoretically, it would
trickles
go.
back?
It'll trickle, yeah, exactly right. It would, I think Mr. Martin's mentioned it before, you have surplus at the end of the year that you're putting into these reserves.
But it's
So that's-
arbitrarily inflating your number year after year after year. If you give it back now,
Not arbitrarily, but I
Well,
mean, yeah,
yes.
it increases the number, yes.
right,
So,
so you're just compounding a perpetual number. So I'm gonna make a motion that D18 gets revised as it goes back as tax relief.
If it fails, you mean?
No, he's making a motion to add a different agenda item.
Yeah, he is.
you want to,
D18, as it says now, is just to accept the money. If we accept the money,
Well, an
No,
appropriate.
no, it
Okay.
is to appropriate it for the 7-8 locker. Look at it.
yeah, it does appropriate it, so you
Yes.
have to amend it.
so we have to amend it. Or no, because
Or
if,
just-
if D18 doesn't pass,
Right.
it goes away.
But it's just gonna trickle, it's not gonna,
Right,
that's
so
why I
that,
asked that question, just
so
so you
we
understand.
need to change that if we want it to go to tax.
No, you'd have
relief.
to do another resolution. If this gets voted down,
different
we would have to do a
resolution.
different resolution.
Correct.
Would we have that option to do that resolution at this meeting?
Yes,
Yeah, sure.
but again, it would also need 7
7
votes to
votes.
pass.
Right.
That's fine.
So what happens if that doesn't pass?
Then it gets back to them through the
Then unless
roundabout
we have
way.
another meeting between now and August 1st, the money will come to Mr. Sties, and it'll, at the end of the fiscal year, it'll be surplus, which will go back into tax
Right.
relief.
It wouldn't be appropriated. It would just be it'll be unanticipated revenue, which theoretically would fall into
But if
surplus.
we had like an
But puts an
emergency,
additional-
could it get used?
I don't think it's that simple.
But it puts
It's
an
not,
additional.
because there's a lot of different rules about using, if you want to use
Unanticipated
unanticipated, you got the
revenue.
last 3 months of the year, the sky's got to be falling, Chicken Little's got to be running around, a whole bunch of things. You need, yeah, I mean, you need so many approvals.
Not like just somebody comes in and needs a residential placement or something?
No,
Just wondering.
no, you almost got to be out of money, literally. I mean,
Okay.
they will look at every single line item. So it's something you will not do.
So what would stop the business office from utilizing that 224,000 somewhere else? And not go back to,
Well, it's the board's decision. It's a recommendation by the administration, but it's the board's decision. So if the board decides not to put that back into the budget, and there's no other resolution, it just is going to lapse into surplus at some point in time.
sure, but
You couldn't come forward at some point and say, hey, I've got a way to spend that 224 that's sloshing
Before
around in the
Before
account.
August 1st, we can, yes.
No, after.
Afterwards.
after, see,
With
he
the-
puts,
You can, but it's that
Ah.
April, May, and June thing.
He's saying it's
but
emergency.
he could use it.
You have to have
Sorry.
such a case.
Sky has to fall.
Right. In other words, I'd have to be out of money. And so go to the county and the state and say, okay, we need this unanticipated revenue because we have 3 placements coming and I have nothing. And they go, I've tried it before, a long, long time ago, not here.
I'm reading it right here, it's gotta be an emergent circumstance.
Beyond emergent, because they go through every single line item. And they will take a look and say, well, you know, you got $14 in this account here, transfer that over first. So they're very, very picky. And I think it's commissioner's approval, which is much more serious than going to the county. If you're going to the commissioner for anything, it's not the position you want to be in unless you have to be. Let's put it that way.
I just had a question to clarify for myself. So, I think it was Mr. Martins who made the clarification that, say this counts as tax relief, it lowers our base by whatever that is, so 250,000. If we approve this for the projects, will that raise our, no?
No, it
No, because
doesn't.
it's state aid, it's not part of it.
It's state aid, right. It's not part of the
Yeah.
tax
So
levy.
it doesn't raise the
It
thing.
does not.
Okay, so, okay, thank you.
Good question, Frank.
Oh, but next year, even though we give it back, right? If we're gonna give back the 220 next year and say we get the same level of state aid next year, that 220 is gonna be there next year with no other changes to state aid.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or
It's
lipstick,
their
yeah,
vote.
if that happens, that would be wonderful.
Assuming we get it like that.
Assuming state aid is flat
Right.
next year.
And assuming we don't
220
get
comes back.
120
Correct.
and then get 224 again
That
like we
would be-
did this
So
That
year.
you're
would be
just
wonderful.
compounding the number. You're just continually compounding a
Got
number
it.
to the taxpayer.
But I'll remind the board, back in,
That we're
was
still
it
below,
2007 or 8, whatever that year that was, when it was, they took away all of our state aid. So just be
Yeah, but
mindful.
we also.
The
we also
majority
have
Our
of
5%.
politicians, but,
The
you know.
majority of schools had a reduction this year. The majority of schools.
So we got money because of
Because
previous.
we've been
Because
getting
we've been
cheated
underfunded.
for years.
Yes.
Or, right, that you can, right.
We've
But
been
I just
underfunded.
want Mr. Stiles put a budget together that we voted on and passed, that the administration could successfully run the district for another year. So I think personally, the prudent thing to do is give the money back to all the taxpayers. That's just my personal opinion on it. Instead of just giving Mr. Stiles another 200.
No, we're not giving Mr. Stiles $200,000. Watchung Hills Regional High School.
I mean, I think you're attacking our business
Well,
administrators.
no.
Too much.
I'm,
I didn't take it that way.
I'm saying that if you look at the past budget cycles and the increases that were asked for, and what happened at last year and even this year's, what carried through the surplus, and where we were, now to be given an additional $200,000, plus the 120 that Mr. Morrison subjected to, that we all agreed is there. Personally, I don't think it's prudent, and I would recommend giving it back to the taxpayer.
Well, no,
On
and
one
I'm-
vote, put it to the vote, and if you want to pull it, pull it. It's your call to put it to the vote or to pull it, Peter.
I'll strongly disagree with you. Every year we put together a budget, we are constrained by caps and how much we're willing to push the caps as a board, and that's a board decision that's made every year. And Mr. Stiles does what he can to put together a budget within those constraints which we give him. And frankly, he also, each year works quite hard so that at the end of the year, you know, there is some surplus so that we can do some things. And so we've accomplished some amazing things with those surpluses. You and I are going to disagree on whether or not this particular money should go back to the taxpayer. But, you know, everybody on the board's got to vote what they think is the right thing to do with this.
One thing I do just want to add is that, you know, part of the reason we do actually have money in our reserves is because we make very difficult decisions every year to put off doing certain projects because we know we need to have money in reserves in case of an emergency. And I have to say that in the various districts I've been in, I mean, Mr. Size is by far the best, most effective business administrator whom I've ever worked with in terms of he meets he really does. He makes sure that we meet student learning needs and maintain the building, but keep money in reserve so that when we have needs, and we have had needs since I've been here. We've literally had roofs cave in and, you know, power outages and things we've had to deal with, and we've always been able to actually open the building and run it because of that. we also have gone out for 2 referendums in the 5 years that I've been here because we don't have enough money in our general operating budget to actually maintain and upgrade our facilities. And, you know, the new architects that we're working with have come up with a very robust plan based on what our programmatic and facilities needs that we have expressed to them. And we're in the process of laying out a 5-year prioritized plan. And again, you know, this is a board decision, but the fact that we actually are getting some of the money back that has been taken from us in past years or not allocated to us, and it's actually going to give us the opportunity to do some of these projects and perhaps not have to go out for a referendum so soon. You know, that's really how we're looking at it. If we give the money back, fine, but chances are, if we want to actually chip away at the list of things, we're going to have to end up going out for a referendum. You know, just so you know what our line of thinking is as we're talking about this.
Which requires what type of vote when you get a referendum? In terms of the people vote, is that the 60% thing?
Taxpayers vote.
No, it's
The
taxpayers.
taxpayers.
That's it's just majority.
It's
not just majority?
voters,
Oh, okay.
Yes. Mhm. But again, that's just so you understand what our thinking was when we're told on Friday afternoon about the aid and that we have to decide what recommendation we're gonna make to the board tonight, you know, in terms of what to do with it, so.
And in the context, Bob is correct. This is not quite half of the annual 2% increase in our budget that we're allowed to increase the tax levy. You know, we do have a year going into negotiations. We do have a year where we don't anticipate that we're going to have as much savings in health insurance as we were able to achieve this year. And, you know, we're looking at trading off doing this project for a $10.26 per average household in Warren, $9 and $7.75 in Long Hill that we're giving back in tax relief. And,
On that sense, why is it always on the backs of the taxpayer?
because we
that's the
because
way it
we
works.
have
Okay,
because we have
fair
to
enough.
run this
Then
because
let's
we
put
have
to
to
a
run this
vote.
district
Let's
on the
put
back
to
of
a
the
vote.
taxpayers. We don't have other sources than the back
Which
of the
is
taxpayers.
understood, and I'm just personally, if you look at what was asked for over the past couple of years, that's all.
Fair
That's just
enough.
my opinion. That's it. That's all that it is.
Any other discussion?
On item D7,
Yes.
in operations, this is where I raised a concern about the type of computers that were being purchased for the type of system that's being used. And so if the vote on this is actually to approve the purchase of those computers.
Yeah, well,
And there's no ability for you guys to go back and talk to them and see, is this really the right thing, or you're just, I mean.
we can, and we've had multiple conversations with them. I mean, if there's,
But it's, for clarity's sake, you know, if that would be approved.
yeah, if the board approves it, it's approved.
And this
we-
is for the,
It's the music lab.
that's the music lab, the
Music Tech
26
Lab.
Lenovo desktop?
Right, and the conversation that took place was the difference between your Mac computers versus your PC computers. Our infrastructure is more set up for the PC. Our IT guys usually lean that way. In fact, the only Mac labs we have left, we've pretty much gotten rid of because of the problems we have with our network. It doesn't seem to work well with our network. That was in 3 and 5, I think. So that was, we did this year's budget, but, yeah, they worked with the architect. We had talked to a contractor. We were asking them, does this software work with this product? They indicated yes. That's all I got. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to, I'm not an IT guru, I will tell you that, but that was the conversation that took place, and Bob, in his experience, feels that the Mac is a better fit for this software.
Well, and actually for this trajectory of career path, music technology, engineering, the way that they would use it, Mac is the preferred platform,
Right.
so. And then, D10. So D10 is the bid for the music tech lab.
Right.
Yeah, I certainly would have preferred a spec that was more balanced,
Understood.
but, yeah, that's my opinion. Supportive of the lab, supportive of the project, could have been spec more balanced.
Okay.
Any other discussion on any D items? Could we have a roll call vote, Mr. Stiles?
Wait, real quick, are
What are we voting
doing
on?
all of D or, yeah?
This is
We
on
we are doing
D1.
D1 through D13
13 plus
and
18
D18 and
and
19.
19.
All right.
So if you want to vote separately on either 18 or 19, note that
For any of
to
the
Mr.
items. just let me
Stiles.
know.
So just so we're clear, even if it voted no and 18 and 19 are voted down, it's gonna hit the school's budget to be decided on in a future.
No, we have the opportunity to move a resolution to have it go to tax relief after this vote.
Yes.
Not
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
that it will
you're-
go that way, I'm just
Right.
saying we have the option to do
Right.
that.
Okay.
And the real last question, and if that gets voted down as well, it'll just go to surplus to be later decided?
We'll just get the revenue, and we won't appropriate it, it'll just eventually go to surplus.
Okay.
That's essentially what happens.
Thank you.
So if I could, in the past, what have you normally looked to carry forward in every budget year as a comfortable surplus?
As much as possible.
Well, we do excess surplus of about $500,000 each year. That's
So-
where we, and then we try to, that's essentially the tax relief.
Tim,
piece.
I think just to articulate that, though, that's the same, it's not a growing number.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
We keep it the same every year. It's kind of like a buffer. One of the things, the BAs, we're all paranoid people, and the thing that we worry about the most is overspending.
Okay.
If you overspend, you have to go back to these folks and ask them for more money, which is
So-
even worse.
If this 250 gets put back into the budget,
224.
224, in the past practice, the high school has looked to carry forward $500,000. We could look as an excess surplus next year of 750.
There's a lot of things at play, Bruce.
Okay.
I can't predict
Fair enough.
what's going to happen next
No,
week.
I
As
understand
opposed
that.
to,
A lot that can
Understand.
happen between
But-
now and then.
Depends on how
Exactly
much we have
can.
to send back to Greenbrook, too.
I'm sorry?
It also depends on how much we have to send back to Greenbrook.
Understood,
That affects that number every year.
yeah, so a lot of different things could happen.
understood.
Bodie?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizio?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
No on 18 and 19.
Yes on
Yes
everything.
and
to all
everything
the
else.
rest.
Got it. Mr. Morrison?
Yes on everything with the exception of no on D7, no on D10, no on D18, no on D19.
And yes and everything else.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Okay. So, D1 through 13, they all are successful. D18 and 19 are not. So they are defeated. Because you need one, but one would have to be, one is not, doesn't work without the other.
So
they're
can
both
we make a
defeated.
motion now to put that dollar amount towards tax relief?
Well, first, let's
Or would you
do
prefer we finish?
D14
Oh,
through
okay.
Mr.
D17.
President, I move items D14, D7, through D17.
Second.
Any discussion of D14 through D17?
Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizio?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Okay, those motions carry.
Bruce?
Can I get a motion to move that dollar amount towards tax relief?
Are you making a motion?
I would like to make a motion that that dollar amount go towards tax relief.
The $224,010.
State aid.
State aid.
The additional state aid
The
received.
additional state aid of $224,010 go to be used for tax relief.
Second.
Any further discussion? We have a roll call vote, Mr. Stiles?
Okay, Ms. Barone?
No.
Mr. Collins?
No.
Ms. DeMizio?
No.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
No.
Mr.
Yes.
And Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
And Mr. Fallon?
No.
Okay, that's defeated. That motion is defeated.
Okay, we are now at the second opportunity for public comment. If you would like to address the board on any matter, public comment will be limited to 5 minutes. Please come up to the podium, state your name and the town you're from, and you can address the board.
Going once?
Seeing none, I will close the second opportunity for public comment. Board members, before we go back into executive session to continue our discussion, is there any other business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to go back into executive session to discuss the superintendent's merit raise. Action may be taken upon our return.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Simple majority.
Simple majority. Have a motion
I'll move A11
Second.
as written?
as written.
Okay. Any discussion on A11? Mr. Stiles, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yeah, who seconded that one? I'm sorry.
Rita.
Rita did.
I
Thank you,
did.
Rita. Okay, Ms.
I
Barone?
just have a quick question, sorry, Mr. Size, because after these meetings, this meeting in particular, a lot of questions, a lot of clarification. I feel like things keep going back and forth. So if this motion fails, the superintendent has the ability to, bring it back either at the same or a different number.
Well, this is a resolution,
That
a
happens
board
with-
resolution,
Yeah.
not a superintendent's
Oh, but
resolution.
yes, board resolution. Okay. All right, thank you.
So we have the ability to vote on
We have
something
the
different if we choose to.
Got it. Thank you. There's been a lot going on today, so.
Done a good job keeping it.
Okay, Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. DeMizio?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
No.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
No.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Motion carries.
Motion to,
Adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.